My name is Josh Miller. I own River Stone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. I've been feeding my dogs Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 for well over a year and a half now, and I cannot tell you the differences that I have seen in my dogs in energy level, in health, in performance, in recovery after that performance. All around, I could not be happier with this food. I am very, very picky when it comes to the food that I put in my dogs. I treat all of my dogs as athletes, and I have to feed them as such. I am beyond ecstatic with my Eukanuba food, and I would highly suggest you go out there and try it with your dog. There are very few places that we as gun dog owners, handlers, trainers can go as a one-stop location to get all of our training needs. Go to gundogsupply.com and you will be blown away not only with the selection of products that they have, but their customer service is second to none. You will not be disappointed. I know the Snells personally. I hunt with them on a regular basis, and I promise you, you will have a great experience going to gundogsupply.com. There are very few things that have changed the way that I hunt, but Sitka gear is one of those things. Not only am I more comfortable, but I'm more confident while I'm in the field when I have the correct attire on. I have also incorporated this into my training because, again, if I'm more comfortable, I can be more focused at my task at hand, which has actually changed the way that I can communicate and work with these dogs. If you have not seen or checked out the Sitka gear, it's a game changer. You got to do it. If you guys have not checked out the Lucky Duck Kennel, I highly suggest that you do that. In my opinion, it is the best kennel on the market. It is one of the very few 5-star crash test rated kennels out there. It is light enough that I can move it around, my wife can move it around with ease, but it keeps my dogs safe. If you have not seen it, you got to go check it out. Your dogs will thank you for doing so. Hey, everybody. Episode 2. If you're jumping ahead, don't. Go back to episode 1. Make sure you listen to that. It was titled Managing Your Expectations. Very, very important for a number of reasons, but I think it'll kind of set the tone as far as some of the things you might hear and maybe put you in the right mindset going into these other episodes. So highly suggest doing that. We are down here at Duck Camp in Arkansas yet. It's slow. It is. There's just no way around this one. It is slow. Weather is still warm up north. Birds haven't pushed down. So now flip side, positively, it's giving me more time to sit here and talk with you all. So I'm taking advantage of that. And as I spoke about earlier in the previous episode, I want to take these first few episodes and really reflect on this first part of the season and really go over some of my highlights. So this episode today, I want to maybe brag a little bit, might be the right way to put it, but I want to talk about a hunt that stuck out to me because of one particular retrieve. And it's amazing how sometimes, when we're all on these hunts, right? I mean, sometimes one retrieve sticks out and it's like, oh my gosh, that was worth the trip right there. And so before I get into this, I want to talk to you about my favorite retrieve that I've ever had. So for those of you who know me, you know Easton. For those of you who don't know me, let me tell you who Easton was. Easton was the dog that, he put me on the map as far as a trainer. He had such an impact on my life. I wouldn't be where I am, both professionally or personally, if it wasn't for that dog. The accomplishments that dog had was incredible, and what was even more incredible is he turned out in spite of me, not because of me. I mean, I made more mistakes with Easton than maybe every other dog I've ever worked with combined, but he taught me a tremendous amount. And as I got towards the end of his life, one of the things I was starting to realize is that I had always told everybody that I had Easton in the absolute perfect time of my life. I'd gotten Easton as I was in high school, had Easton then growing up in college. We weren't supposed to have dogs in the dorm, but everybody loved Easton, and we hunted every day that we could, so Easton was in the dorm a lot. And then, of course, when I get done with college and start my career and start training with different trainers and traveling, Easton went everywhere with me. And so he was a huge part of my life, and that's why I say that I had him in the right time for me in my life. But as he was getting older, what I was realizing is that he had me in the exact wrong time. And what I mean by that is that I couldn't afford to do anything. Like, I couldn't afford to go on any big hunts. I could hardly afford, when we were going to tests and trials, I could hardly afford the gas and the entry fees to get in. That young kid and that time in your life. And so as Easton was getting older, I made a bucket list for him, and it was birds that I wanted him to retrieve or places that I wanted him to hunt and experience. And I tried to make it doable. I knew that he was getting much older. I still knew that I was in a time where I wasn't necessarily in a great spot financially, and I tried to make it as realistic as possible. And we went through and we knocked off bird by bird, situation by situation, and there was just one that we couldn't get, and that was a bull pintail. For whatever reason, I just could not get him a bull pintail. And I went on multiple trips, a couple trips to the Dakotas, one trip to Missouri, specifically trying to get that for him, and just couldn't do it. So Easton passes away, probably to this day the most difficult day that I personally have ever had. Any of us that have been there you've gone through it, you know what that's like. And then, fast forward a couple of years, Brock comes into my life. For those of you who know Brock, you know Brock. I mean, he's an extremely special dog. For those of you who don't know Brock, Brock is, I think he's 5 now, and he's a yellow British Lab. I brought him over from overseas as a young pup. He's just been fantastic. I mean, as he grew up, you could just tell how special he was going to be. And so I look at my favorite retrieve that I have ever had was we were in Arkansas on a lease that we had a couple of years ago, and Brock was with me. It was actually a day that we had to break ice in the field because everything had froze up, and we were actually screwing around the blind. I can't remember what we were looking at. We were probably looking at somebody's phone, I think is what we were watching a video, and I think there were 4 of us in the blind. And we're all standing in the back of the blind watching this video. And I just happen to glance up, and I see a wad of pennies sitting down and going to lighten the decoys. And I jump to my gun. Of course, Brock's sitting in the hole where he should be watching the whole thing. Jump to my gun. They flare. They get up, and I pick out the biggest sprig that I could. And a one shot, drop that bird. And I didn't even shoot again. And everyone's like, why didn't you? I was like, I got that, that bird that I wanted, And so I send Brock. And as Brock is breaking ice going out to this bird, it's actually kind of hard to talk about right now. I mean, it was hard. I got choked up because to me, it was almost like I was watching Easton make that final retrieve that I was trying to get for him. And so as he came back, with that bird, it was tough for me, but at the same time, it was almost like that closure, like, all right, that's the one that I was looking for Easton, and so he's really he was a special dog. Brock is a very special dog. So Brock has, of course, I always believe that you don't replace dogs. You find another place in your heart for them. And so Brock has kind of stepped in as where Easton was as far as he goes everywhere with me, he does everything with me. But Brock is also that dog that is extremely special. There's just not many dogs that are of that caliber. I have a lot of great dogs, but Brock just has this little extra about him that I really, really enjoy, especially in the field. So now that you know a little bit about Brock, we'll kind of come back here to the story. And I know we're down here duck hunting, but one of the other reasons that I love, love, love Arkansas is speckled bellies. If you have never been in a speckled belly spin, underneath a speckled belly spin, do yourself a favor and make that happen. It is so loud that you can't hear your buddy talk next to you. I mean, it just gets crazy loud. These birds are acrobatic. They're animated. They communicate. I mean, it is a blast. If you can get into a good spec feed, it is worth your time. Plus, they're delicious, so add that into it. But what I love about getting out in the spec fields is that you can really stretch your dogs out and you can see what your dogs are made of. I love hunting the timber, love hunting the woods. If I could do that every single day, I would. I don't believe as a hunter, I'm a big archery hunter too. I think this is up there with it, but I think hunting ducks, specifically mallards, in the woods is one of the most intimate things you can do as a hunter because you're just so close to these birds. You're watching them do things that you don't get to normally see them do, the way they move, the way they talk. Is really, really special. But as a dog handler, most of your retrieves are 15, 20 yard in the decoy type retrieves. I mean, they're pretty easy retrieves for the most part, right? So as a dog handler, I always like challenging my dogs. And so when I get out in the speckled belly fields, I can really stretch it out. So our first spec hunt that we had this year, a few friends that I've really gotten to know over the years of hunting down here, hunting in this community. And we've actually gotten to be really close, which is fun. But they had a feed lined up, invited myself, my dad, my brother was down to go join them. And so we get there. And it seemed like it was going to be a little bit of a cluster from the get-go, just because I think there was 14 or 15 guys. There was another guy that had a dog that you could just tell was all over the place. It was just going to be kind of interesting. And I wondered, my buddy called me and he said, make sure you bring Brock. And I was wondering why, but I quickly understood that this other dog probably wasn't going to be as polished to pick up some of those longer birds, which I love because that's what I love sending him on. So we were in it. I mean, these birds were doing it right. They were spinning and spinning and spinning. I mean, they put on a show. I mean, it is intoxicating. It is mesmerizing sitting there and watching all this happen to the point that when Whitney came with me, my wife, she came with me about a couple weeks after this. And we got into them again, and we all popped up to shoot, and she never did. And I was like, why didn't you shoot? And she's like, honestly, I was just enjoying watching them way too much that, I didn't have to shoot, which is super, super cool when you can get to that point in your hunting career. But it's a special thing. So we were in them. Everything's going right. Big rainouts, right? I mean, a lot of birds to pick up, which was great. But there was one bird in the first group that sailed, and it really, really, really sailed. Like, one of those birds that flies, and all of a sudden he's on the horizon. You just see him, drop out of the air. You're going, oh my gosh, So we got a mark on it, and we hunted the rest of the hunt. And, so probably, a couple hours go by. We limit out. Everybody, is excited. We pick up all the birds. And, this whole time, Brock has been being tested because the other dog is not being steady, right? So the other dog is dang near trying to catch the birds as they come down out of the air is how quick they are out there. And I don't care how finished your dog is. That's tempting for an older dog or a finished dog even to sit there and be steady with that going on because that competitiveness comes out, right? But he did a great job. He's sitting there being steady, doing everything he's supposed to do. And we get done with all of this, and it's time to go pick up that long one. I had no idea how far this bird actually was. So there's 15 of us, standing there. We're all trying to figure out, okay, well, was it there or was it here? I mean, none of us can see it. We just kind of have an idea. And there was water spots in the field. So we're going, all right, well, like, I think the third water spot from that one light spot. And I mean, it was almost felt like a poke and pray kind of thing. Like, just send him back there. So I line Brock up, send him, back. Takes his line, as Brock does. He's a very good line runner. So he carries that line a good ways. Then kind of starts getting off a little bit, whistle, give him a right angle back, carries it, whistle, I gave him a slight left angle back, and on that second whistle, I didn't understand until I casted him. It didn't register with me how far away he really was. I mean, he was a long ways. So I gave him one more quick one because I knew the further he was getting, I mean, he's getting to the point that he's up almost a pin drop out there. I knew I wasn't going to be able to communicate with him that much longer. So as a handler, I'm trying to put myself in his shoes going, okay, he's looking back. He has to be able to see me in order to take a cast, and he's getting to the point that he's on the fringe of that. So I sit him quickly one more time, try to figure out right where that bird is. I'm trying to play the wind, which way the wind is going, just in case I'm off, where do I think he's going to catch the wind at? And I give him one more cast, and I just let him roll. And man, I have run a lot of dogs on a lot of long retrieves. I mean, and I understood how long this one was at that point. I mean, I had never seen a dog make a retrieve at this distance, and to the point that there was a guy behind me. He just said, "Dude, I can't even see that dog," and secretly I'm sitting there going, "Well, shoot, I can't either." But I'm trying to play it cool and kind of watch it, and all of a sudden you kind of see him. You can see a flash of movement, like he stopped and he turned goofy, and you can still see he's moving, but he's so far away we can't tell, is he coming to us, is he coming away from us? And my buddy Rob from Gundog Supply, who's a great friend of mine, great person, but he's my camera guy. He goes everywhere with me. He has a mega lens, and so he's trying to capture as much of this as he can. And so he can see, I can't remember how many times, magnification he said that he could see, but quite a bit more than we could. And all of a sudden, somebody goes, "Is he coming back to us with that bird?" And you just hear Rob go, "Yup." And about that time, it was like, somebody just kicked a game-winning field goal, and the stadium erupted because we all were just ecstatic about it. It was one of those retrieves that, in my head, that will live on forever. That bird will be going on the wall because it's just one of those special ones. But as we're picking up, we're all sitting there talking like, how far do you think that was? How far do you think that was? Well, so we have a side-by-side that we brought out there with us, and so what we did is we went out on the side-by-side, and because it's muddy, so we can see his tracks, and we just drove his tracks all the way until we saw where he was, and he picked up that bird. Where he was, and he picked up that bird, we drove another, it was another little bit, and I stepped it off on the way back. It was 28 more yards. The odometer turned a half mile. He made a half-mile blind retrieve, which I think a half mile is like 880 yards, something like that, and that's incredible. It shows you what these dogs are capable of. It's so funny to me how often we limit our thoughts on what these dogs can do, right? Like, oh, like that's too far. Oh, that's too hard. Or, oh, that, I mean, they're incredible athletes. And, moments like that, to me, it's obviously a very, very proud moment. I mean, I had every guy in there talking about how great he was. And the next hunt, we're in the blind, and I'm sitting at the end smiling because there were 3 guys on the hunt telling everybody else about this retrieve and how great Brock is. And, it's very, prideful for me. But I think as we look at kind of as a whole, it's amazing, not only, 1, what they're capable of, but 2, what some of these hunting situations kind of push you to do. I would never have gone out and put out an 880-yard blind and gone and ran him on it in a training situation, right? 1, because I don't have a ton of places I could even do that. But 2, it's just not, in my head, a realistic setup. But it's amazing how these live hunts can show you what you thought was realistic and what is actually realistic. So I know this was a little bit more of a bragging one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Got a little more of a background on me and my background with Easton. You'll probably hear a lot more about him. But yeah, speckle bellies. If you can do it, if you get the opportunity, both for you and your dog's sake, I would highly suggest taking advantage of that. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to Eukanuba, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.